Calendar 168, H.R. 5371, and Executive Calendar number 460.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today is day 16 of the Schumer shutdown. Democrats have an opportunity to end the charade today. We'll be voting in the next few moments. I expect they won't. Why? Well, for starters, the minority leader believes every day gets better for us. I'm not sure who the us is, but that's what he believes. He must be talking about Democrat leadership, Democrat politicians. Can't be talking about people all across the country, not the people who work every day to keep our country safe, not the federal workers who aren't getting paid. Oh no, he can't be talking about them when he refers to every day gets better for us. What Senator Schumer and Democrats in this body are really saying is this: every day of this Schumer shutdown strengthens their alliances with the far left activist groups. These radicals hold the reins on today's Democrat Party. They're driving the stagecoach. Schumer's not leading this. Jeffries isn't leading it. The people that are driving the stagecoach are the left-wing activists, and they are driving it over the cliff. Let me give you another reason why I suspect Democrats will once again refuse to reopen the government. It's because the far-left activist groups are pressuring the Democrats to keep the government closed until after their radical anti-America rally, which is going to be held this weekend. The rally, which some have labeled the I Hate America rally, is going to take place Saturday, and there'll be rallies in D.C. and across the country. We've just heard from the minority leader on the floor inviting people to attend these rallies, to participate, what I have referred to and others have as the I Hate America rally. He is a cheerleader for these far left activist groups and their causes. All these rallies are going to be led by the far left activists, and all will be calling on the Democrats to keep the government closed. And the Democrats in this body are beholden to every single one of these far left activist groups, groups like, quote, #ResistTrump and American Atheists. So here's a headline from Politico. Chuck Schumer's critics are satisfied for now. The article goes on to quote the head of the far-left activist group called Indivisible. This group is organizing Saturday's radical rally. The leader of the far-left group says of the minority leader, he said, quote, "He hasn't surrendered yet. I call that progress, and we're cheering him on now." Well, 7 months ago, that same person had a very different message for the minority leader. That same person said, quote, "Senator Schumer should step aside as leader. Every Democrat in the Senate should call for him to do so." So what changed? Well, Senator Schumer started towing the line of the far-left group. He shut down the government in spite of the fact that 13 times when Joe Biden was president, he voted for a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open. Well, what changed? Well, the minority leader is now the puppet of the radical, extreme, dangerous, scary wing of his party. He's huddled with the far-left activist group for months before this shutdown. Months. They orchestrated, they organized this shutout in Senator Schumer's office. They organized a war room for the shutdown. They're calling the tune. Senator Schumer even gloated to Punchbowl News, quote, "We thought about this long in advance. This isn't something that just happened. They've been planning this. This is premeditated. It's a political game for Senator Schumer and the Democrats, and it is a dangerous game for every other American. People aren't receiving paychecks because Senate Democrats want to prove their allegiance to the far left. Democrats want a standing ovation this Saturday when they rise to address the radical wing of their party, the wing that's holding the reins and holding them tightly. A wing that's extreme, dangerous, and scary, that is pro-crime and anti-America. That's what we're facing, Mr. President. Senate Democrats want to be cheered on for holding hostage the paychecks of the TSA agents and air traffic controllers. Meanwhile, Americans are sick and tired of Democrats' dangerous political games. They just want to get back to work. Today, Democrats are going to have an opportunity to prove that they aren't beholden to the far left of the party. We're going to have a vote. We're going to vote on a bipartisan appropriations bill as well to fund the Department of Defense, to fund the war fighters, the troops, the people who keep our nation and our allies safe. Now, Mr. President, this bill has already come through a bipartisan appropriations committee. The vote was 26-3. 26 voted for it, only 3 voted against it. That same bill we're bringing to the floor today. And we're going to see if the Democrats are going to work with us on the bipartisan appropriation bill. They claim they want regular order. They claim they want things to work together. And it's a bill that they have said themselves it's necessary. Now, remember, Senator Schumer last year didn't bring a single appropriations bill to this floor of the Senate, in spite of the fact that 12 bipartisan bills passed out of the committee. He refused to bring any of them to this floor to fund the government when he was majority leader. Wonder who he's going to side with today. Senate Republicans this year have already approved 3 appropriations bills to fund the government. This will be the 4th. Democrats are holding the government hostage. They're holding the American people hostage. Republicans are committed to reopen the government. We are going to vote against that today. We're holding votes on our bipartisan, clean, continuing resolution, one that Democrats have voted on 13 times in favor of when Joe Biden was in the White House. Now, I believe that Democrats have an opportunity as well as an obligation to end the Schumer shutdown. We should end it today. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Democrat Whip.
Mr. President, last week we learned that Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado had won this year's Nobel Peace Prize. This is a photograph of her. She did so for her steadfast and courageous fight for democracy.
26 and further purposes.
Mr. President, I understand that there is a bill at the desk that is due for a second reading.
The leader is correct. The clerk will read the title of the bill for the second time.
S3012, a bill to appropriate funds for pay and allowances of accepted federal employees for periods of work performed during a lapse in appropriations of further purposes.
Mr. President, in order to place a bill on the calendar under the provision of Rule 14, I would object to further proceeding.
Objection is heard, so the item will be placed on the calendar under Rule 14.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this morning we will offer my Democrat colleagues yet another opportunity to vote to reopen the government. To vote to reopen the government with a clean, nonpartisan CR. That's right. We are not asking Democrats to swallow any new Republican policies. We're not asking them to swallow any partisan policy riders. We're simply asking them to extend current funding levels for a few weeks while we work on full-year appropriations. And you don't have to take my word for it. Everyone from the president of the Teamsters Union to mainstream media outlets has confirmed that the CR Republicans have put forward is a clean CR. But Senate Democrats chose to shut down the government anyway. Now, Mr. President, Democrats' ostensible reason for their 16-day shutdown is because they want Republicans to agree to bail out the health care mess that Democrats created, first with Obamacare, and then by passing and then sunsetting enhanced Obamacare tax credits that were put in place for the COVID emergency, which I think, as we all know, is long behind us. And despite the fact that we're only in this position because of Democrats' poor policy choices, Republicans are ready for that discussion. I'm ready. My colleagues are ready. The Speaker and the President are ready. But, Mr. President, only once we've reopened the government. We're not conducting negotiations in a hostage situation. And we're not going to pay $1.5 trillion ransom to get Democrats to reopen government operations. That's right, Mr. President, $1.5 trillion. That's what Democrats are demanding. Between their Obamacare bailout and the other partisan policies that they've included, they want a $1.5 trillion ransom to reopen the government for a handful of weeks. Now, to put that number in perspective, that's the equivalent to almost 1/4 of the entire 2024 federal budget. Again, just to reopen the federal government for a handful of weeks. Now think about that, Mr. President. Their proposal, $1.5 trillion in new spending, free health care benefits for non-citizens, to open the government until October 31st. That's what their proposal is. So literally, the American taxpayer is supposed to pay $1.5 trillion so that the Democrats can open the government until Halloween, 2 weeks from now. $1.5 trillion for 2 weeks. That's what we're talking about here. Now just imagine this for a minute, Mr. President, what might happen if we pay that ransom and agree to the Democrats' $1.5 trillion demand. Well, what's going to happen the next time we need a continuing resolution? How much are Democrats going to demand then? Well, we have to add another $1.5 trillion every time we want to fund the government. And they want to do it for 2 weeks. $1.5 trillion for 2 weeks. I mean, where does this end? When taxpayers and our economy have been totally destroyed by Democrats' profligate spending, is that where it ends? No, Mr. President. While I am more than happy to discuss ways to alleviate Democrats' health care mess, we're not paying $1.5 trillion, a $1.5 trillion ransom to reopen the federal government. Now, Mr. President, as frustrated as I am with their continued refusal to reopen the government, I do have to say that I have some sympathy for Senate Democrats. While they may claim health care is the driver of what they're doing, we all know that the primary reason we're in this mess is because Democrats' far-left base demanded a showdown with President Trump. Just 7 months ago, the Democrat leader voted with Republicans to keep the government open because he said, while he didn't like the CR, a government shutdown would be, quote, much worse. Far worse, end quote. But he caught a whole lot of flack for that decision from the far left. And so now, he's leading the shutdown charge. And he's not the only Democrat who voted to fund the government in March. He's now a member of the shutdown brigade. But Mr. President, no matter how much pressure their far-left base is exerting, we still need some Democrats to do the right thing. It would take just a handful of Democrats to reopen the government. Just a handful of Democrats to enable us to resume paying air traffic controllers, law enforcement officers, and all of the other federal workers. Just a handful of Democrats to get the federal government working again for the American people. Later today, Democrats are going to have another opportunity to make the right decision. 2 opportunities, in fact. They're going to have a chance to vote on the clean, nonpartisan CR, which, as I said, in the past sits right there at the desk, which has passed the House of Representatives. We can pick this up with 5 more Democrat votes, pass it today, send it to the President signs it into law, and the government reopens. So they're going to have a chance to vote on that yet again. And they're going to have a chance to vote to advance full-year defense appropriations legislation, so that if we can't reopen the entire government, we can at least make some progress toward securing paychecks for our troops and for defending our country. Just last week, the Senate passed the National Defense Authorization Act, which is essential legislation, something that we do every year to authorize defense spending and to authorize a pay raise for our troops. So this is Democrats' chance to make good on that promise by funding the raise. The authorization bill authorized it. The defense appropriations bill that we will vote on here later today will actually fund that raise so our troops can get paid. Now again, I realize that Democrats' far left base is rallying in D.C. this weekend, which puts extra pressure on Democrats. But I hope that they'll do the right thing anyway and vote to reopen the government. All we need is 5. Bill's right there. Goes to the president, he signs into law. Government reopens. Mr. President, the American people are depending on some, I'm hoping, Democrats who are willing to put the interest of the American people ahead of the interests of their far-left base. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I seek quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsterbrooks.
Mr. Thune. Mr. Thune, no.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 44. 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative, the motion is not agreed to.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader,
I enter a motion to reconsider.
the motion is entered.
Well, Mr. President, the Democrat Party is the party that will not take yes for an answer. We offer Democrats a clean, nonpartisan CR, no Republican policies for them to swallow, nothing for them to object to. They said no. We offer to accommodate their health care demands by guaranteeing them a vote on their proposal if they vote to reopen the government. The answer is no. Okay, fine. So we thought if they don't want to fund the government via continuing resolution, we'll give them the chance to fund the government a different way by attempting to move forward with regular order appropriations bills. And once again, the answer was no. Democrats just voted to block the fiscal year 2026 defense appropriations bill, a bill, I would add, that passed the Senate Appropriations Committee by a robust bipartisan margin. 26-3, I think it was. That's right, Mr. President. After voting last week for an authorization bill to increase troop pay, Democrats just voted against the bill that would actually pay the troops. We have to ask the question, why, Mr. President? Because, to quote a recent news story, this is a direct quote, voting to proceed with the defense bill relinquishes some of the party's leverage, end quote. Relinquishes some of the party's leverage. I mean, who really cares, right? If the troops are paid, as long as the Democrats are able to get what they want. Well, Mr. President, I offered up, and I had conversations with Democrats here on the floor, that if we could get on the defense appropriations bill, the interest they have in adding other bills, I would certainly accommodate. And I suggested that that was the business model that we adopted when we passed the first three-bill package. We got on the Milcon VA appropriations bill, and then we worked collectively, both sides, to try and clear adding the Ag Appropriations Bill, the Ledge Branch Appropriations Bill. We tried to add the CJS Appropriations Bill, which was objected to by one member on the Democrat side. But that's how we fashioned getting these appropriation bills on the floor and getting them voted on. Now, if anything should be clear by now, it's that I am interested in doing a normal appropriations process, unlike what happened when they had the majority, which was the Appropriations Committee will report bills out, 11 of the 12 last year, not a single one was brought to the floor of the Senate. We've done 3 bills. We're trying to go to conference on them. They're blocking that. So now we bring up the Defense Appropriations Bill, something that should get 80 votes on the floor of the Senate, that, as I said, came out of the committee 26-3. And they're blocking it. Now, there's a path forward here to do appropriations. Get on the bill. And then we'll try and add other appropriations bills as we work with both sides to clear objections and concerns that people have. The fact of the matter is, Mr. President, they didn't have to block us even moving to the bill, because there are multiple opportunities, 60-vote threshold opportunities for them to block it later on if they don't like what happens. This is politics. If anything was needed to demonstrate just how fundamentally uninterested Democrats are in supporting our troops and defending our country, just take a look at this vote. Mere months ago, Mr. President, I say mere months ago, Democrats were complaining about all the damage shutdowns do to hardworking Americans. I literally could fill the rest of this hour with Democrat quotes from the past few years about the devastating impacts of shutdowns. Now, Democrats couldn't care less. They're happy to sacrifice any American and evidently any principle to their political goals. Mr. President, Democrats like to position themselves as the party of the little guy and the defender of hardworking Americans. But as this vote makes clear, who do Democrats really care about? Democrats. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I move to proceed to legislative session.
Questions on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion's agreed to.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a closed debate on the motion to proceed to Calendar 168, H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent to read the names be waived.
Without objection.
And I move to proceed to executive session to consider executive calendar number 294.
Questions on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion's agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, the Judiciary Ann Lee Gaylord Moe of Florida to the United States District Judge for the Middle District of Florida.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a closed debate on the nomination of Ann Lee Gaylord Moe of Florida to be United States District Judge for the Middle District of Florida, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent to reading the names be waived.
Without objection.
And I move to proceed to legislative session.
Questions on the motion? All in favor, say aye. All
Aye.
opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion's agreed to.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to executive session to consider executive calendar number 372.
The questions on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, the judiciary, William W. Mercer of Montana to be United States District Judge for the District of Montana.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a closed debate on the nomination of William W. Mercer of Montana to be United States District Judge for the District of Montana, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived,
Without objection.
and I move to proceed to legislative session.
Questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to executive session to consider executive calendar number 373.
Questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, the judiciary, Stephen Chad Meredith of Kentucky to be United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Kentucky.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
Clerk will report.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a closed debate on the nomination of Stephen Chad Meredith of Kentucky to be United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Kentucky, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
Senator from Kansas.
Mr. President, thank you. First of all, I'd like to compliment the Majority Leader, the Senator from South Dakota, for his continued efforts to have the Senate return to the days in which we were the greatest deliberative legislative body. Assuming that was ever true, it's hard to find any evidence that it's true today. And it's certainly a basic function of the Congress to do appropriation bills. I've heard a number of my colleagues, particularly Democratic colleagues, complain about the appropriations efforts by the White House, by the administration. They remind us that the Constitution puts in the prerogative, it's the Congress that appropriates. Here we are trying to appropriate to do our constitutional duties, and the vast majority of Democrats stand in the way on one of the most important appropriation bills that we could consider, the defense appropriation bills. Our adversaries, our allies, again, wait, watch for signals that the United States of America is the country it needs to be to defend freedom and liberty around the world. And as of today, we're incapable of funding our Department of Defense. And Mr. President, I highlighted yesterday in remarks that those who've come to the floor and worried and complained about the military men and women during this shutdown who are not receiving compensation for their service to our nation, the most straightforward way to make certain that those who serve are compensated is to pass the defense appropriation bills authorizing and appropriating the money to make those payments. And yet today we stand, there are those who stood in the path to prevent that from happening. A related topic that I want to address today, Mr. President, is that as President Trump today spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and tomorrow he will meet with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, I want to highlight how important it is, how critical it is to securing a resolution to Russia's unjust war in Ukraine. I had intended to give remarks today on this topic, and I opened the Wall Street Journal this morning, and as I was reading it, its top editorial on the editorial page deals with this topic, and I would commend it to my colleagues. It expresses the views as I wish that I could express them so clearly. I'm going to try to do so today, right now. You know, last week we witnessed the long-awaited peace agreement between Israel and Hamas. It did come to fruition. Thanks to the efforts of President Trump and his administration, a ceasefire is holding. Iran has been dealt a crippling blow that has weakened its hold on the region, and Hamas has released all living hostages who had been held captive for more than 2 years. While we recognize there are significant challenges that remain in the Middle East, this marks a critical step toward a just and lasting peace in the region. This agreement would not have been possible without the strength of the United States military, our steadfast alliance with Israel, and making it unequivocally clear to Hamas that the United States is willing and able to assist our ally in war. Through strength, the U.S. brokered a peace deal that serves the security of Israel and the humanitarian needs of Gazans alike. Now, as the conflict in Ukraine has surpassed its 3-year mark, Putin remains undeterred in his mission to carry out his unjust war on the Ukrainian people. Each day this war continues, lives are lost, and the safety, economic stability, and global leadership of the United States are threatened. This war must end. To bring an end to this war, the United States and our allies must maintain pressure on Moscow. As was just seen, we remained pressure on Hamas. One recent and important development in this effort is the potential transfer of U.S. Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. This weaponry will strengthen Ukraine's ability to defend its territory, deter further Russian aggression, and help level the battlefield as negotiations hopefully move forward. By providing advanced precision strike systems, America demonstrates that our commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty is backed not only by words, but by legitimate support that can alter the course of the war. I commend the administration for its efforts to facilitate this transfer and for leading discussions between Ukraine and Russia that hopefully will secure a durable and just peace. The United States cannot act alone. Our NATO allies must also shoulder the burden. President Trump recently secured an agreement with our NATO allies to increase defense spending from 2% to 5% by 2035. This commitment is critical to maintaining the continued defense of Europe. Russia's economy is already under strain, but their capacity to fund conflict will continue without enforcement of steady and severe global sanctions. Before Congress, there's legislation that has widespread support of more than 80 senators from both sides of the aisle. This legislation would deliver a severe blow to Russia's economy and trade. By cutting off the resources that allow Putin to fund this war, we can hasten the path to success in finding peace. Last week, we advanced the Defense Authorization Act, but today we failed to advance the appropriations bill to fund our military. We always should recognize that the world is watching. They're watching us. Our adversaries pay attention, and our allies pay attention. We have to every day make clear the case that it is true the United States is a stable and friendly supporter of our allies and a full-fledged adversary to those who wish to cause us harm. Our adversaries, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, are always looking for the opportunity to disrupt our alliances, weaken our resolve, and disturb the free world. It is imperative that the United States stands firm in its support for Ukraine, and in doing so places significant pressure on Putin to show our adversaries that democracy will not go undefended. Mr. President, I yield the floor. Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from Kansas.
I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alster-Brooks.
Kansas.
Mr. President, thank you for the recognition. I would ask unanimous consent to lift the quorum call.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate resume legislative session and be in a period of morning business, with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate now proceed to en bloc consideration of the following resolutions, which are at the desk: S-Res 455 and S-Res 456.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the resolutions en bloc.
Mr. President, I now ask unanimous consent that the resolutions be agreed to, the preambles be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, all en bloc.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 3 p.m. on Monday, October 20th, that the following prayer and that following the prayer and pledge, the journal of proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, the time for 2 leaders reserved for their use later in the day, and the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes. Finally, that the cloture motion filed during today's session of the Senate ripen at 5:30 p.m.
Without objection.
If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask it stand adjourned under the previous order.
Senate stands adjourned till 3 p.m. on Monday.